What's going on, everybody? This is Cody, the home theater hobbyist. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to review a nice little 2-channel amplifier. It was the SMSL DA9, and I liked it a lot because it was nice and compact, had a nice clean sound to it, and it could power most speakers. I honestly liked it so much that at the end of the review, I actually recommended that SMSL put a little travel case inside the box so that you could take it with you to your friends' homes and stuff like that. And quite frankly, that's a little weird. I'm going to be honest. I looked at that and I was like, why did I say that? Who's taking an amplifier to somebody's house? Who's traveling with it? But honestly, I still stand by it because I just like that amp. It was a nice little amp. But that was sent to me by A Post Audio. And when I returned it, I told them I liked it. And they said, hey, Cody, if you really like that one, you will love this one. And they sent me this, the SA400 from SMSL. Now, this is an upgraded version of that. It's larger, it's more desktop class size. It has a few more features and it has more power. And I'm talking raw power. Tim the Toolman Taylor type power. Yeah, this thing is truly legit. So I want to talk about my experience with this over the past week or so in this video. So first thing you notice about this is it has the SMSL design language, and I think that's a good thing. It's a nice matte black case that is aluminum, so it's got a decent bit of weight to it with amplifiers and stuff built in. And like I said, this is desktop class size. It actually reminds me of the Mac Mini in that it's got these nice rounded corners, a flat top, and when you sit it down on the desk, it just kind of sits there and does its thing. Now up front, it's got a nice color LCD screen, and if I turn it on here, you can see it light up. Now on this screen, it gives you information like volume, input selection, and also internal temperature if you have that selected in the menu system, and you can see the menu system on this screen. Obviously you need to be a little bit closer, but you can see it. But over here is a multifunction knob that also works as a volume adjustment. So as I turn it up here, it actually does turn up, and it's got little notches in it so you can kind of click it in just like that and really dial in your volume or whatever it is that you're doing. And I like this volume adjustment because it is nice and linear from 0 all the way to the top end of 80, because this maxes out at 80 volume, or at least that's what the display says. It says 80. And then here in the center, it's got a little button that you can push to access the menus if you need to access them, and then you can kind of scroll through like that. And if you just push and hold, it turns the unit off. All right, this does have a remote. It's the SMSL remote, and it has power, mute, volume adjustment. You can go in the menu selection, you can select the different inputs. So it works for a remote, but it's a nice plastic remote. But like I said, this is an amplifier. If you want high-res audio, you're going to need some sort of processor or digital to analog converter, also known as a DAC. It has a Bluetooth built in via this little antenna right here, but it does only support aptX, which sounds good, but aptX HD or LDAC is going to sound better from a Bluetooth support. And if you're purchasing this, honestly, you probably need to be using it for high-res music. Now, the DAC that I used was actually this little guy right here. This is the Topping EX5. It's actually really a headphone amplifier slash processor DAC, and I used it in preamp mode. And the reason why I did that was because I could make the volume adjustment coming out of this 100, then I could mess with the volume here to really figure out how much power this amplifier has, and I'll talk about that in a second, especially with this speaker. But before I do, I want to mention one thing. When I was using this, I noticed that this chassis in general got a bit warm. I mean, it wasn't so hot that I couldn't touch it, but it did get a bit warm. And I turned on the internal temperature monitoring, and I noticed I got it up to like 62 degrees Celsius, which again feels pretty warm to the hand. But it does have a fan, and it is actually down here on the bottom. And the fan does work because when you turn it on, it actually runs through a quick little self-test mode, and the fan kind of spins up and then it stops. Now, I was never able to get the fan to actually turn on while I was running this because, like I said, I never got it above, I don't know, 60, 62 degrees Celsius. But honestly, I think that is a good thing because you don't want any fan noise when you're listening to your music. So I don't know where the fan turns on, but I can say that it is a fan in there and it does work. Every time I flip it on, it turns on, but it doesn't run under normal operation. Now, one of the questions that I wanted to answer with the SA400 is, does it have enough power to drive a difficult to drive speaker at reasonable volume levels? Because one issue you can run into with amplifiers if they don't have enough power is when you have a difficult to drive speaker and you want to reach reasonable levels, let's say 75 dB at your listening position, you have to turn the volume all the way up, and then you can run into distortion issues and all sorts of things. So you really don't want to do that, right? You want to have headroom with your amplifier. So what I did was I tested two things. I tested this speaker. This is the Audiophile 1723S. This is the monitor version, and this was my difficult to drive speaker. It's a 4-ohm speaker and is 88 dB efficient. Now, my easy to drive speaker was this speaker. This is the Klipsch RP150M. It is an 8-ohm speaker and it's about 96 dB efficient. Now, like I said, I wanted to test this at reasonable volume levels. So I set my sound meter up at my main listening position and I was targeting 75 dB. I set the preamp volume at 100. Then I began increasing the volume on the SA400. And for the RP150M, I found that at a volume of 22 on the SA400, I got 75 dB at the listening position. Now, for the 1723S, the volume had to increase to 30. And that's 30 out of a total of 80 on this amplifier. So it had plenty of headroom. If this was 84 dB efficient, I probably would have had to turn it up to 45, maybe 50. But again, I would have still had headroom, and that's what you're looking for. Next, I wanted to turn the preamp volume down just a little bit. So I targeted 75%, and that increased the SA400 volume output to 60 for the 1723S. So you still have some headroom there, but not a ton. So somewhere between, let's say, 70 and 100% preamp volume is the sweet spot for this speaker. But again, you have headroom with this amplifier. Can it drive every speaker known to man? No, probably not, but it's going to be able to drive a ton of them because it has headroom. Moving on to sound quality, this has the SMSL sound. And what I mean is it's got a nice, clean, clear sound at pretty much all frequency ranges, and it's kind of direct, a little bit of a direct sound to it. So you get nice treble, you get a nice natural mid-range, and it's got clean, tight bass. It really reproduces what the artist intended. Now, for the bulk of my testing, I listened to this in the default EQ mode, which is called direct, but it has several others, and I'll talk about one that I really like that I think is pretty dynamic in a moment. But in that direct EQ mode, I listened to a gospel artist. His name is Brian Poppin, and he has this song called I Got Out. And the song starts off with somebody singing, and it sounds like they're singing from a transistor radio because it's kind of small, and there's like these hisses and popping going on, and this played that very, very well. I mean, I felt like I was listening to a transistor radio. But then the song transitions into a stage with like a band and a full-on choir. So the soundstage really opens up quite big, and this captured that sound as well. All of a sudden the soundstage just opens up and you've got this big band playing and this choir's, singing behind this artist, and it works really well. But what I was really intrigued by was the transition from the, let's say, transistor sound to that big sound. It was a nice smooth transition as I imagined the artist intended. I wasn't there for the recording, but I imagine that that is exactly what the artist intended. Not like, a step function where it goes from flat straight up and over, but a nice smooth transition from transistor over to big band sound. And again, this played it. I also listened to an artist that I actually just came familiar with. It's an album called Reach by a jazz pianist called Jackie Terrison. And this is a well-recorded album. And what I like about this particular album is that honestly, it sounds like it's recorded in like a small bedroom, to be honest with you, because it's a real kind of closed in song. It's clean, but it's really kind of closed in. And again, this played that sound without any issue whatsoever. It really played the artist intent, and that's what you want from your amplifier. I also noticed that it doesn't seem to color the sound at all in that direct EQ mode. because I compared this to my Monoprice Monolith 7-channel amplifier and I didn't notice any additional color. I also compared this to the Emotiva Bass X A7 7-channel amplifier in 2-channel mode. And again, I did not hear any additional coloration. I did notice that this does have a bit more power than that does in 2-channel mode. That will output, I think, 125 watts into 8 ohms in 2-channel mode, and again this can do like 230. So I did notice it had just a little bit more bass presence when I was using this and comparing the two. Now I did test this at high volumes and I can say that I didn't hear any audible distortion. It was still clean and clear at high volumes, so this sounds really good. As I mentioned earlier, there are several different EQ modes, 7 to be exact, and the one that I like the most is called SDB. I don't know what that stands for, and I wish they had a bit better documentation on like the EQ modes and, you know, what temperature this can get before the fan comes on and stuff like that. But SDB, I like that particular EQ mode because it's more dynamic. It boosts the bass a little bit, boosts the treble a little bit, and it just sounds really good. Is it true to, you know, the artist's intent? Maybe not, but it does sound really good. And if I had people over and we were listening to music or something like that, that's probably the mode that I would put this in, but you can try out whichever one you want. But it also has a little bit of a custom EQ to it because you can adjust the bass, the mid-range, and the treble plus or minus 12 dB. So you can really dial it in to the settings that you like. And it has the subwoofer output with a subwoofer gain control. So you can go up 12 or minus 30 and really kind of dial in your subwoofer if you want to go for a nice 2.1 setup. So I like the way this sounds. It doesn't color, it has plenty of headroom, and you can also EQ it sort of the way you want. So from a sound quality standpoint, this is a winner. I haven't talked about price, but this costs $660 as I record this video. And I think that's actually a pretty good price because you can definitely find 2-channel amplifiers that are way more expensive than this, but they may not even sound as good, and this actually sounds good. Plus it has a ton of nice features. Not only does it have the EQ modes that I mentioned, but it has like an auto off feature, so you can shut the screen off if you don't want it on. You can change the brightness of the screen, and it can do a lot of other things. So this is actually a really good deal. And again, when I compared it to the Bass X A7 from Emotiva, which is one of their entry-level amplifiers that was outputting like 125 watts in the form, well, this is going to put out 230, and there was a noticeable difference even at 75 dB from my main listening area. This had just a little bit more bottom end because it could feed the speakers just a little bit more power. So I think this is a really good deal at $660, and I do recommend it. Now, like I said earlier, you will need some sort of DAC to drive this. This is an amplifier, but you will need a DAC or processor. So I will put a couple of links in the description below so you can pick up a DAC for this. One of the SMSL DACs I think will work beautifully with this, and it will match this chassis. So again, use those links in the description below to purchase this or anything else. And thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section and I will try to address them. Don't forget to hit us up with that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you next time.